there you go, right there. Electric weather.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, this was cool. This is in the ice. This is pretty cool. I just ran into this. That's the Michael. It was the eye. So they ran into the eye of the hurricane. So.
Oh, I've seen this.
So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Very
you see the trees around.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Flattened all in one direction.
But I can hit him again.
The weather is pretty calm in the eye. Usually.
Yeah, exactly.
There's almost no wind and so on.
Right.
Welcome to the October 28th edition of the Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we have Jim, Eugene, Heather, Buddy, Edwin, and David. We will be talking about the electrical properties of biological creatures, the deification of Nikola Tesla, and what we know about the movement of the stars. Please like and subscribe below.
So you're saying these two groups you were forming, Buddy?
Yeah, electric universe weather and electric universe biology.
Okay.
We just started them and invited a few people, but everybody who's from the electric view is automatically going to be in one or the other or something like that. She set it up that way.
Oh, I just set it up so that if you're already a member, you don't need approval. Like if you go there and ask to be added to the group, you'll automatically be added. But I could only do that with the groups that I'm admin in. So it was only Sam, the Electric View, Starbright, and EMP. Okay. I was trying to put people if you were already in EU Geology, but I'm a moderator, not an admin, so it wouldn't put automatic entry. But I did link all those pages to it. So if people are looking for links, they can link to the Thunderbolts. They can link to EU Geology, Archaeology, all those other ones. Philip Francis's page, the Electric Cosmology. I linked like hopefully everybody to it. Is you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, but just because it's they're like aspects that we just kind of want to like round out the ball, the biology part. There's so much there, and
it's really interesting.
So much information. Let's just start putting it out there and
collecting it into basically groups so that they're chapters. They become chapters in the whole entire theory of electric universe.
Right. Very cool.
But one of the ones in the electric universe biology is cuttlefish's electric skin. They actually call it electric skin. They have, so that's an interesting one for sure.
What are they?
Cuttlefish.
Cuttlefish.
Yeah, cuttlefish are amazing. If you want to pull one up, you can see their electric skin. They literally talk about how their skin is electric and they can change the electric fields around them.
Cuttlefish. Oh wow! Yeah. They got a very interesting.
Some of the amazing cephalopods on the planet.
Yeah, I like the persona.
People theorize that cephalopods are alienish.
They have an octopusy kind of look, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And electric eels too. They have this like a similar.
And platypus. The platypus uses electric signaling at all sorts of different types of stuff. So that's like the mixture of a mammal and that lays eggs. That I don't know. Platypus are just amazing creatures. Platypi.
Mm-hmm.
Platypuses.
Yeah,
there was a kid
trick
or treating anglerfish, and that was cool. Like any of the bioluminescence.
Oh, trick or treating as an anglerfish?
What a great costume!
Oh man, like, with the thing hanging down. Yeah.
His face will come out his mouth and he had a little light hanging.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder. So.
If you type electric skin, it'll take you right to the guy talking about this electric skin.
Okay, cool. The one here, yeah.
There's no skin on Earth like a cuttlefish.
It's like 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh man. That's
So what is he saying in a nutshell? Is it like for signaling or is it for some other purpose?
We could listen to it. It's only 2 minutes long if you want to.
it's to get the sound over. I'm
Oh,
having
right,
trouble
right,
with it.
right.
So since you watched it, buddy, it's a good opportunity to narrate.
Yeah,
I'll put you on the
that's
spot. Yeah.
That's what I was suggesting, basically.
You did it.
Go, buddy. It's you.
I didn't even watch. I watched it a while ago, about a year ago, and I just remembered it, and I put it on the site already. The Electric Universe biology. I can't remember exactly what he's talking about, but they changed the pigment over constantly, and for some reason they equate it to some sort of an electrical phenomena inside of the pigmentation of the skin. So
we're seeing it here, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at.
There's all the colors.
Right.
And then they become translucent, and man, they can mimic almost anything. It's really beautiful to see them in action.
Yeah, you get a lot out of that. Yeah, it's like very, very squid-like.
Yeah, like I was saying, a lot of people theorize that cephalopods are some sort of alien type of creature on our planet.
Okay.
Yeah, octopuses are from outer space.
Yeah.
Like the thought is that they came here via like extraterrestrial travel.
Okay.
And
But what do they share?
Go ahead.
Why do they share so much common DNA with other species on our planet?
They're their own very separate phylum. You have squids, octopi, and also I think mollusks are very similar to them, like snails and things like that. They say that octopi they only live about 8 years or so, but they never were able to branch, teaching their youth into the next generation. Otherwise, they'd be they'd be able to shed the knowledge that they learned while they were alive, pass it on to the next generation. But they can't, because there's a generational gap of lack of intelligence. They learn all by themselves. They become super smart. But if they lived a little bit longer, then they'd be able to teach the next generation some of the tricks that they've learned. But it just doesn't work that way because of their short lifespan. And some people say they take over because they're too smart.
They lay eggs?
Oh yeah, their eggs are beautiful.
Wow.
The whole process of mating is electric, and this takes you right back to Walter Russell. It'd be great to do a Electric Universe Walter Russell done.
Yeah.
Just because he was such a pioneer in the field, but he's kind of controversial. He's so controversial that I guess he doesn't get the credit that is due to him for talking so much about everything being electric.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like the color of their wallpaper.
It's pretty interesting to put him in a living room with it, and then
I like the purple bits, and yellow is also pretty nice. It's like again this royal purple plus gold just looks super fancy.
Yeah. And then the checkerboard floor, it's this Masonic overtone to
it. Illuminati.
Right.
We were dancing on an Illuminati floor last night.
Oh, look, it goes zebra. That's pretty interesting, right?
He's like, I'm confused.
But he's pulling something off there.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
But how does it know from which direction the enemy is looking at it?
Probably mostly aerial.
Well, in this particular setup, so to speak, it can assume at least 2 different colorations, but it only takes one somehow. If you look at it from the side or from the top, there's a different background,
If you see it in its natural environment, they change the texture of their body to look like coral. They push it out, and it becomes really crazy. This is in like our type of environments, but in nature, dude, it becomes so texturally different.
I don't know how many checkerboard patterns are in nature like that, like underwater.
But it really, it's very interesting to start thinking the hyperbolic type of idea.
Yep.
You see it in here, right? It's like I'm going to try to map this Cartesian thing, and it's like, see, it's hyperbolic, right?
That's great.
Right.
Good noticing.
Yeah.
That it's what's that? I can't remember the name of it. The binary sequence where it branches off in 2s.
Yeah, a binary tree.
Bifurcation.
Yeah, the bifurcation. There's a constant.
Fractal.
Feigenbaum's constant is what it's called, and it branches off very quickly into chaos. See how it branches into the chaos right at the belly of the bottom of that curve? It looks like double branching bifurcation.
And
I actually
here?
thought about it too. Yeah, it really resembles that. And by the way, it's a sort of a sidetrack, but that a fine structure constant that is basically the constant of interaction in electromagnetism, it might be derived from the Feigenbaum constant.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating and really amazing and really almost creepy kind of coincidence, if it is a coincidence, because maybe there's something bigger here.
Yes, for sure. Actually, David posted something about the Feigenbaum's constant and the Mandelbrot set and how they pair. There's parity there. And inside of the Feigenbaum's constant, there's magnitudes where there's open windows of order, where all of a sudden it's very orderly and it only branches off in 3, and then it closes back off very rapidly into chaos. David, is there any way that you could type up Feigenbaum's constant and Mandelbrot?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we can see how fractals fit in with this. But yeah, my thoughts exactly with the fine structure constant. This goes right along with it, and how life continues to flow. Yep. There you go.
Oops. Let's just do here.
Images. Yeah, they pair on the top. Yeah, next one. Yeah, those two. Yep. And that also matches the dyadics and the bifurcation of dyadics and the in wave conjugation. So like you'll get destructive and constructive wave interference. If you look at patterns, the open windows of are the you can actually see them, how when they branch off, you can actually see the open windows. And I think it's very, very similar to
there it is. That's exactly what was happening as it sloped down the back of its back and came into that other part of its, in that like flat part of its fin. Yep. That's exactly what was happening. And it seems to me too that because there was like layers on top. There was like 2 layers on top of a of patches of some sort of pigment or some sort of thing that they were reflecting. So it's like they're taking the color underneath and then refracting it back in that way to create the color that's underneath of it, to mimic the color that's underneath of it.
Yeah, it picked it up.
It picks it up and it turns it into the thing that it wants to. It like creates that.
Yeah.
from what it picked up. So I wondered too if it's because when it was going toward the object, the change started from the outside. Like that was like almost instantaneous.
Dude,
that one changed.
I think we just stumbled upon one of the ancient Illuminati mysteriums.
The cuttlefish mystery. No, it's really cool. Let's go back to that. You mean with the checkerboard? You kind of see that's where I saw it the most. So, yeah.
Yeah, how to invert it, and when they invert it, that is exactly what's going on. Like Heather was saying, it picks it up from the ground floor, picks it up from one side, laps it over its back, and then deposits it on the other side.
Where's the photoreceptors on it? Like, how's it doing the scan? You know,
But is it a photoreceptor, or is it because when you at the very beginning of this video it showed the layers? I'd like to look at those again if you don't mind.
Well, sure. The beginning of it.
There it is. There's the
beginning of it. Yeah.
So that's one side of the fish. See how you were asking, Eugene, how the side, if a predator is coming from the side, there it is. See, look at the texture on it, dude. Oh, there it is again. The texture is just amazing how it changes. It turns into almost everything.
The geometry itself, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was this the first video in the line of links or the second video? It was in the first video that.
Was it here? Let's see what we got here as we went in. I think that's the first one.
This one. Yep, that was the one, and then there was a point where it showed the layers broken down.
Oh yeah, with the pigmentation. Yeah.
Okay, it's only 3 minutes, so we can, if we're patient, we can go. Right there, I see things very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a wave, how it works itself out from wherever it registers. Like, it's chosen this thing. It's like a reflective wave, and then it sends that wave out and creates that reflection throughout the entirety of its skin.
Cuttlefish are definitely cuddly. Oh, the texture,
I don't know if
dude.
I'd snuggle that.
Snuggle, yeah.
Dude, look at how it changed right after it ate it. Immediately.
Is the texture actually changes? Because I think it's only like the 2D image on its surface that kind of imitates the texture, no?
Yeah, I'm seeing three. I was seeing it actual like there, right? Oops,
yeah.
This one is actually that to me looks like it's actually doing the geometry.
Yeah, is that per species of cuttlefish? Some of them are smooth and some of them are more textured, depending where they live, or will they all do this?
They all do that, as far as I understand.
The geometry too.
Yep.
Wow.
So, oh man, this reminds me of John Stewart Reed and the dolphins describing three-dimensionally objects.
Yeah, that's been coming into the radar for some reason. So. Right. I mean, and then look at all this stuff, and then the holographic nature of water.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, was that with memories?
Well, yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, well, one of them you could, but optically more easily, right?
Yeah. Well, we know. I mean, throughout most mythology and religion, a lot of it has to do with water and blood, and the understanding of life. Because we're observational creatures, we see that everything needs water and everything has blood. Okay, so there's a secret there. There's a special thing there, And I feel like nowadays we don't really give too much credence to the fact that the power is in the water and the blood, and there's a lot of understanding how life works with just studying those two things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually think that there's more and more understanding right now that like a human being or any other alive being for that matter is like a medium rather than a system. It's like a soup sort of, where a whole bunch of things is kind of dissolved and exists on its own. and of course the liquids like water and blood are perfect for, you know, like being the base of this soup, so to speak. And for example, the latest discoveries about the role of symbiotic bacteria like gut bacteria, which live inside of this soup, so to speak, although, you know, mostly like again in the gut and so on, but still, and of course we still don't know how it all works. I mean, how does, you know, these like blood cells know where to transport these substances, where to transport the other substances, and so on? But somehow it all organizes itself. But again, it all, to me at least, it all seems like an organism is like a big cell, essentially, a big cell where the stuff is dissolved inside, and it only appears to be organized into organs because they have to have some purpose and so on. I mean, some specialized function or whatever. But even in one cell, we see organs. And so yeah.
It really begs the question: where does life begin and where does life end? And that kind of brings me into the transmutation of lightning and the decomposition of bodies and bacteria and fungus, because if like we say, there's been a lot of catastrophic events where life has been surmised, and then each time a lot of that biology and biological matter needs to be deteriorated and decomposed. So it's like the transition of that all lies in bacteria, lichen, and algae, and then a lot of that, I think, has to do with lightning and the cycle of things.
I would actually like to make a step backwards and even ask, are we actually sure that life has a beginning? I mean, should it have a beginning? I mean,
or is it
I've been thinking about
it a continuum, you mean?
Yeah. But maybe life existed like eternally.
Right.
I think, like, for example, well, I have a big problem with Big Bang Theory exactly because it states that the universe, there was a point where universe did not exist, right?
Right.
So it kind of sprang into being from nowhere, and I have big problems with that because it basically refutes all the known laws of nature and laws in physics in particular, and in even more particular, so to speak, the conservation laws, right? Because if energy, if momentum, angular momentum, charge, and so on conserves, then there should be no point in time where there was no energy,
right.
You know, if we see it right now, for example.
Right.
So it almost like inevitably leads one to conclude that the universe is eternal. I mean, the very existence of such laws of conservation. So, and at the same time, the best definition of life that I came at this point to is that life is something that repeats itself in time and multiplies itself in space. So basically, I wouldn't comment a lot on that, but the point I'm making right now is that maybe we actually cannot understand the beginning of life, kind of looking from inside life, so to speak, on it,
as if it
just
needs,
like
right, as if it needs a beginning.
Yeah, because if life is something that repeats itself in time and multiplies in space, then if there was nothing to repeat it, you know, before life began, then how can it something be repeated,
right,
so to speak?
But it's cyclical. I mean, it's cyclical, right?
Yeah, basically what I'm saying is that from the standpoint of physics, the beginning of the universe is impossible because, you know, that refutes all the laws of physics. And from the viewpoint of life, in my opinion, the beginning of life is also impossible. And therefore, I actually think that both life and the universe are eternal. And of course, it might not be correct, but I mean, well, I basically clearly stated the base of such argument. And I think that at least I actually haven't seen anyone discuss this idea that life may be eternal, and I think it kind of might be a useful addition to the whole pool of ideas that we have.
I like it. But what about death, though? I mean, death is as part of the cycle, right?
Yeah, but what guides the individual organism?
Yeah, things are always done. Always. Well, this comes into speciation and extinction ultimately, and new species are being created constantly on the planet. But that doesn't mean that that's the beginning of life. That's just a continuation of life, off of life, off of life, off of life.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
But there is a reset to the cycle that refolds everything back in, and I think that reset is electric, and I think that there's an electric beginning of life, and we know this from when the sperm enters the egg, there is a flash of light, a very bright flash of light. The more phosphorus, or what is it? The more zinc that the egg has and the combination has together, the brighter the flash and the healthier the kid. So right here we have a way of monitoring the overall health of a person, which would bring you into eugenics very quickly. And
at the moment of conception, you're saying?
Exactly. If you Google,
but then you got to be in the lab when it happens.
Well, that's the thing. You test tube babies.
That might be uncomfortable,
Test tube babies could be the future of the heightened strength and humanity.
Is it when the woman has more zinc, like there's more zinc in the egg, or there's more zinc in the sperm?
I'm not sure. We should look into it.
Ultra zinc combo conductor of life here. Like, what is the?
You want to play a video, David, for us and see this?
I like this one has come up quite a bit, but I'd like to get back to it. The energy transport, with these two and how similar, But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can hop back to that, or go forward, whatever.
Yeah. So tell me again where we're going.
It is egg and sperm flash of light.
By the way, just before we go into this, I've heard a very interesting another idea recently that life can actually be another state of matter, just like like liquid, gaseous, and so on. So maybe returning to what I've said, maybe there is actually the kind of the law of conservation of life, if you like, or something like that.
As a state of matter,
but this is just super intuitive.
As a state of matter, but maybe as a state of energy, like a type of energy. It would feel more as an energy, because the energy can't be destroyed; it can only be transferred. So if you're transferring life feeds on life feeds on life, and it's transferring through, then it would characterize itself more as an energy than as a state of matter.
So the beginning of life. This is also a really, really touchy subject. And there's not really definitions yet on the beginning of life and the end of life, because you have he's mostly dead. He's mostly dead.
Mostly dead.
And then at the beginning of life, people want to say it's this time, 3 months in, this time. So it gets very ethical very quickly. But I propose that life is right the second that it enters and that flash of light happens. And end of life is, that's still up for debate, because a lot of people are mostly dead right now. And
but
halfway dead, partially dead. There's a lot of different states of that. And
it's spectral.
Yeah, it's a spectrum.
But then again, both the egg and the sperm are alive even before conception. So it's kind of a I don't know.
Well, it's the other direction, right? It's going from many to one, right?
The one that it takes from has to die in order for it to become the next thing when you eat food, when it changes into food. But these two things come together, and they are no longer the individual thing that they are, right? They become entirely something else.
Yeah, and the baby's blood can be completely toxic to the mother, and a lot of the other stuff inside of the baby but the mother can still breed it because there's no breach because of the placenta in the two
Not
bloods.
necessarily.
It can produce that way, and even you can continually feed your baby with what was it, a certain type of blood, and that other type of blood is poisonous to your system, and you can create it because it's based off of two different people, not you. Inside your belly.
What's the ritual with the eating of the placenta?
We're capsulizing it, dude. We're putting it in capsules. Who wants some? You want some in your cereal?
Well, the thing is, though, is that the placenta is energy rich. It's nutrient rich. It's iron rich. It's everything that the female body made in order to support this thing. So when the thing is gone, that is all the depletion. It's like renewing, like taking back in the depletion of resources that was put out to create the new thing.
Most mammals eat placenta.
They need it, and then to be able to keep feeding, because technically on your system a child is a parasite. That's why you're not supposed to eat like pomegranate and other things that are anti-parasitic when you're pregnant, especially in the early terms, because it can cause your body to reject this parasite. That's that's not part of the initial system. Get rid of it.
If you go down, scroll down.
See one word.
There should be like a few eggs.
So that one looks like a real one.
The next one, the black and white one, that's the one you want to go to.
This
down.
One? This one?
Yeah. That's the one where you can see all of them flashing when the sperms enter.
Okay.
Are these human embryos or are these
human? But I'm sure it happens with all creatures.
Yeah, the other one was mice as well.
Oh, nice. Okay. And other animals, yeah. Also been shown to happen in humans. Okay, nice. So this literally is a way to steer humanity towards the greatest race on, as far as
you're building the master race again.
Huh?
I'm kidding. You're building the master race again.
Well, no, I mean it's a reality. You can see it here. This is just the path that leads to it. I don't know if anybody's jumped on the bandwagon, but
the eugenics. It's always that's a hot topic, of course, right?
Yeah, and the transhumanism along with it.
Yeah.
I think it's only a matter of time when these things would go practical. It's inevitable whether we like it or not.
Well, look at it
that way or another, I would say.
Yeah. Look at it this way: if you want you want the best for your child, you want them to be the healthiest, so you're going to make sure ahead of time that you deposit either a few eggs, you offer a few eggs, and then you offer, maybe one sperm doesn't light them up the way that another type of sperm lights them up. So it's all about the flash now. It's all about the brightest light. Crazy.
Is that what happens?
It looks like it. I don't know.
It's
like releasing hormones or something. Yeah,
it's DNA.
It's chromosomes. Yeah.
And then the multiplication, mitosis and meiosis of the cell.
Which just shows why the sperm is the indicator for the.
It's pretty nice animation.
The gender, that the male is the decider of gender.
What would be a cool experiment is to see if the one that usually makes it in, or the ones that typically make it in, if they're actually the brightest sparks out of the bunch of the whole, if it is really fitness,
Let's just get down to brass tacks that not all of them are the brightest sparks in the bunch. Okay.
It's like this guy was holding a bong hit.
But where did you get this idea that the brightest sparks are, correspond to the healthiest children? I mean, those flashes were only discovered a couple of years ago, is it not?
Yeah, but that's what they say. That's what the science says. Is the brighter flash, so far.
Well, but they said
I
they've
thought
been
that-
observing it in animals for some time. They just observed it in humans. So
Yeah.
maybe they're talking about, because I mean, obviously, you could study many generation of mice over a couple years.
Well, this is the weird part. Where does zinc come in? I mean, we talked about
Zinc is a conductor,
before.
yeah,
This
and
is
especially
weird.
with health and like if you have a cold and they recommend you take zinc for
Yeah.
your immune system. And
Why is it zinc?
booster
Where does
everything.
zinc come from? What the heck is it? You know, like where's Ito?
Zinc is
I just want to advocate for sick people.
yeah.
Against eugenics, because society needs sick people also, like me. You know, the people who are
All of
All
us.
of us.
It's not, it's yeah. And
People
then
who are-
right, go ahead.
people who are kind of broken inside. You know, we also have our uses, because we venture into places where healthy people wouldn't. You
Right.
know, so. It's also perhaps not very healthy to make everyone healthy, but that's sort of a
That's an
wider
interesting
discussion.
paradox.
Yeah.
Well, where do the autistic children fit in? Are they the brightest sparks because sometimes they're the smartest in certain areas, you know, and Asperger's and things like that?
Well, that's only one.
that,
That's what I mean.
later on in
That
time?
light, because okay, we see the light of that, right? But there may be some other type of emission that we're unable to see that happens, but we're
Yeah.
only looking at that one parameter to say, okay, that's what makes it good. You know? There may be others that happen,
For sure. Usually.
right?
Yeah,
that we're not aware of.
Maybe you know, maybe there's another star in our galaxy that lights up when somebody's born or something like that.
Yeah, that's that whole thing.
Every
Yeah.
time a bell rings, an angel gives it.
That is super esoteric, I guess. But
Well, no, it's bringing
I just
it's
you
bringing
know
it to an EU astronomy type. Like, think about the brightest flashes in the cosmos. Those could be the greatest bearers or harbingers of life, or in some sort of extra energy or intelligence or something. You know.
Right. I mean, you know, it's a creative process, but often you'll dive into something and it'll be absolutely unexpected and unfortunately sometimes horrifying. You know.
Yeah, it's just you know that well, there is a couple of pictures now going on over internet. They're like you know, funny memes and stuff. But anyway, I've studied a couple of premises of those, and in particular, what was the number, at least the supposed one, of the people who ever lived on Earth, and it turns to be something like 100 billion or something. And it's just very curious that our galaxy also has like 100 billion stars or something like that. So
Around the same magnitude of.
Yeah, there's the same magnitude of cells in our body and stars in our. It's either, I forget. It's about 1 trillion. Wherever there's 1 trillion stars in our local area, but they also scale together. 1943 zinc penny.
See, yeah.
I thought they were steel.
Why did they do it there?
I thought they were steel too.
Yeah, what's that up with? Maybe that's an extra rare one.
There's an interesting year, like what was going on right around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, the
cheers-
senior has those on his vest because he was born that year. He collects those.
Nice.
420. Cool. So let's see. Where do we go from here?
We still haven't figured out why zinc is beneficial.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out. Actually, Heather, you had quite a bit of helpful information. We were talking about this topic right when the meteorite hit on one of our EU conversations. And I remember, Heather, you gave us quite a bit of insight about zinc, but there was other people in the conversation as well, so I can't remember exactly how it went. But what the heck is zinc? Like, I know Ito's on here. Maybe he can enlighten us to part of what the atomic element is.
Is Ito still there?
Well,
Oh, there.
sorry, I was muted there.
No problem.
I'm really not sure. I'm looking at it. I'm trying to figure out what part it could play here. It's an interesting metal. It's a metal a little bit in between the normal metals and non-metals if you will. Zinc is important for resistance in the human body, I believe. It plays a role in your resistance, right? In your how do you say that?
Immunity.
Immunity. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I find it highly interesting, but I have no clue how zinc would fit in. I'm thinking about a potential here is thinking about Lenner reactions. So biology, especially in the sprouting of seeds, for example, if I may equate that to the birth, to the process that we're talking about, the sperm and the egg and stuff. There are alleged transmutations going on there too. So who's to say that at that moment with that flash, there's something going on a physical level. And this is merely speculation, mind you, but I'm trying to get somewhere. But no, I don't think I have anything more to add than this right now.
Can you guys fill me in? I mean, what's the premise of importance of zinc? I mean, why do you think it's so important?
I think it's a conductor. I think it's like an amazing conductor way that it happens to help with all of these problems. I feel like it's some sort of like information transfer, because the more that there is, the more these different things can communicate, and the better off you are. And also when it comes to plants too, because there's like a certain amount of trace metals that have to be available in order for the plant to understand how to divvy up its nutrients. And it seems that this element has the same type of function within our metabolism.
Well, my question is here, how vital is zinc in the role of other creatures in DNA and replication? Because that's where my mind goes, is to the fractal replication of life. So maybe we could look up zinc and mitosis and meiosis, because that's where it's going to go. It's going to unfold into the cell somehow.
Maybe it plays the role of catalyst or something.
Yeah.
Actually, well, the very idea of catalyst is very mysterious. That I don't think there's a I don't think there's a theory existing that would explain why catalysts are so important. How do they work in the first place? Why does any substance that does not take part in any reaction actually somehow amplifies this very reaction? But anyway, again, this is a sidetrack sort of.
The previous
zinc oxide.
website. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, in the previous website that you had up there, I thought it just zipped by something that said about zinc and contraception.
Well, right here I've got this. It says benefits. Zinc is vital for healthy immune system, correctly synthesizing DNA.
There we go.
Promoting healthy growth during childhood and healing wounds.
Boom.
There you go.
Give your kids zinc. Not fluoride, zinc.
According to the European Journal of Immunity, the human body needs zinc to activate T cells.
Okay.
T cells help the body in two ways: controlling and regulating immune responses and attacking infected or cancerous cells.
Blood.
Zinc deficiency can severely impair immune function.
Boom. I think right here, I can honestly say that everything in the electric universe is going to lead to water and blood. And then it's going to come out of that, because that's where life is. That's what everything is based off of ultimately. And then in electric universe geology, it's going to point to the symmetry of the crystal lattice all being the same, and that being life.
I wonder if crystals.
There. Yeah, it's definitely going that way.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder what the crystalline zinc structure is, because that.
Even with the structured atom, that's where it deals with the the structures,
Well, but I'm talking not just the atom form, but the actual element itself, because sometimes
Yeah, I wanna see
gold
what zinc looks like.
different things come different ways, and sometimes crystals.
Hexagonal.
Check out that shit.
Where have we seen this before?
What's up?
Now we don't even. Yeah. So much has just
Cubic
been
lattice.
answered.
Yeah.
So we've learned that zinc is important, but I also like to hear the other side, so to speak. Maybe you should Google like zinc poisoning.
Oh right. Well,
yeah.
Just to see what happens if you have too much zinc.
Too much zinc. That's a good
So-
idea. But this way, this says research conducted at the University of Toronto suggested that zinc has a crucial role in regulating how neurons communicate with one another, affecting how memories are
Oh
formed
my gosh.
and how we learn. And that's what I was talking
Dude.
about, how it being a communicative receptor, like it's transferring information between
Neural synapses.
yeah
Oh my
and your
goodness.
DNA.
It's the spark
So
of the electric biology.
just reading on Wikipedia here, zinc is an essential mineral, including to prenatal and postnatal development. Zinc deficiency affects about 2 billion people in the developing world and is associated with many diseases in children, deficiency causing growth retardation, delayed sexual maturation, infection susceptibility, diarrhea, etc., etc. Sounds like an important little mineral there.
Get your zinc, everybody.
Okay, so
And,
Then
and somehow it's very important in the very earliest stages of development, from what I understand. So probably
Meaning cell
it's-
division.
probably or maybe the nervous system,
Yep.
the very basic system of the organ, or maybe blood cells or something like that. I mean, the blood vessels. I mean,
So I don't know about you guys, but for about 8 years now, I've been taking zinc every time I get that feeling that I'm coming down with a cold. I've been taking zinc, echinacea, and golden seal every time I feel that way, and I rarely ever get sick, if ever, and I don't take flu shots either.
So here's two interesting ones too, that zinc prevents cellular damage in the retina and helps delay progression of AMD and vision loss. And then also several studies and trials have linked poor zinc status to low sperm quality. For example, one study in the Netherlands found the subject had higher sperm count after zinc sulfate and folic acid
Ooh.
supplements. So they concluded that poor zinc intake may be a risk factor for like low quality of sperm and male infertility. So it's definitely related in the sense of it isn't just because a lot of times reproductive health gets put on the woman's health because we have our eggs, but the thing is that our eggs were formed when we were formed, so that would mean that their quality is based on the quality of our beginning formation, where men create theirs as they go along, so it's indicative of their quality right now when it was produced.
So how do you create zinc? What does it look like? I want to see zinc metal. Is it a metal? Can we see the actual material?
Yeah, we
what it
were
looks
looking
like?
at just a little bit. Yeah. I've always seen these reactions that are kind of. I remember seeing them, but yeah.
Oh yeah, zinc crystals that come out of the pennies.
Yeah.
You cut the pennies and they come out.
It's actually a big problem right now. I mean, right today, the bad quality of sperm in modern men.
That's
it's
true.
a really, really good studied subject, and it's a potentially a very big issue. I mean, it's really, if you Google that, you would find all kinds of awful prospects on it. So yeah, maybe it's all due to some sort of mineral deficiency or something.
Yeah.
You see?
I don't hear anybody talking about get your zinc.
Well,
Get your
but
zinc.
I also did find what you were asking for, Eugene, about if you take a severely high intake of zinc and you get nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, stomach pains, headache, and diarrhea. And it says excess zinc may suppress copper absorption, according to the studies. There's also some evidence that increased levels of zinc in the bodies may play a role in the development of kidney stones, which absolutely makes sense because you're not processing this like heavy metal. But I mean, it's the benefits of small intake are it's like don't take too much, but I don't. But they don't seem too severe.
Okay, so
There we go.
so
Actually,
Look at
one
that.
interesting thing about zinc is that it's amphoteric, which means that zinc oxides, for example, they can both form acids and bases,
Okay.
ooh, DNA.
just like aluminum, for example. So
But
yeah,
aluminum, good for us. Aluminum actually causes, like, if this is going to build up your neurological conductors, receptors, this is going to help all of these things come along. Then aluminum is basically like the opposite, because it causes Alzheimer's, it causes retardation of all kinds of functions within our body if taken in too much. I mean, aluminum is toxic to us internally. So that's
So what's aluminum made out of? Zinc and something else?
Aluminum.
no, it's another element,
Oh.
and they're not like mutually exclusive, because zinc has a, I'm not sure what's the proper term, valence. Do you have the term valence? No, probably not. But anyway, aluminum is that the thing. So aluminum has this of 3 and zinc of 2, if I remember correctly. So they're not. Huh?
You are correct. Yes.
Okay, and I think aluminum also can have 1, but I might be mistaken here. But I'm definitely sure that it has 3, like aluminum 2O3, for example. There's such an oxide, and zinc O. So zinc has 2. But again, I don't remember what is the correct term for this chemical thing.
So we know that zinc plays vitality. Zinc acts as vitality inside of neural synaptic transfer, things like that, and as well as DNA and the health of the promotion of life in mammals. But I'm wondering about if it also plays such a vital role in other creatures. I'm also curious about cold-blooded creatures. And a side note, I also looked up chromosomes, because I've been pairing numbers and looking at things, and the amount of chromosomes in different creatures and organisms, and there's so many different, it varies. Like avocados have like 90 something or something like that, and we have 46, and 23 and 23 pair to make 46. But yeah, there's like a lot of different things have a lot of chromosomes. I can't remember exactly how many it has, but yeah, there's a lot of different creatures, and their chromosomes are completely different numbers. I had no idea how long strands are and how small strands are, because I'm really curious in the whole idea of being helical, as well as Birkeland currents being helical, as well as electricity, waves, frequency, vibration, etc. So I'm curious to count, like how many revolutions, how many rotations in each one of the life's parameters, and each one of what we get to view as an existent creature here on this planet and other planets or wherever we find life. So there's structure, there's organization, and there's symmetry inside of all the creatures, and the assembling of the creatures atomically and biologically and electrically. There is fundamental primitive first principle geometries that all these things fold off of and unfold off of. And Edwin's all up in the base of the nucleus and the atomic theory of first principles and how all of these things unfold off of them, because it is an unfoldment, and ultimately Birkeland currents are folding these and unfolding these. So there's a winding and an unwinding on all layers of helices bound inside of each other, like that. Look at that chromosome structure. If you look at what is our body, there's your skin, collagen. If you look up collagen, it's a trihelical strand. You look up DNA, it's helical. You look up life, and then you look up Birkeland currents, and there's a clear commonality of all things and inside of these cycloids. Helical,
Wow.
it's called.
I actually never thought about Birkeland currents as, DNA double helix. That's actually an interesting analogy here. Yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, for sure. I have lots of images depicting it as well. Donald Scott's review of them is just, I do backflips over it, because I'm happy that someone who understands what Birkeland currents are said what they said about the model that I'm working on and the models. So,
and again, if you look at the chromosome, doesn't it look again like a squatter man? For example.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's just quite amazing how these patterns repeat both on super small scale and large scale. Supposedly again,
right? You start thinking about these in terms of, okay, we're seeing them in this our existing coordinate system, but you take this form and then you start looking at it in like hyperbolic space. It's things start happening. You get to the toroidal ideas, and then it's very interesting.
The whole thing is toroidal. Ultimately, helicity and torality are more fundamental than space and time. All things unfold utilizing the
scale,
the shape, power, and the scaling of helices and a forest of torices, really.
Right.
Scaling outward.
Yeah, this is where it gets profound, and it gets really. This is where the paradigm potential. It sounds nutty to begin with to the uninitiated, but it's like seems to me where the paradigm shift is the potential for the paradigm shift is. That area.
And that's where most things are leading to. I don't want to sound heretical, but dare I say Nassim Haramein, and the double torus. But people see these images, and it's
coming through on all these different angles, as we know. Obviously, right? It's in the air. We can hear. We hear the song. It's like ultimately, there's like. I feel like I'm a troubadour and I'm singing a song about something. Yep. I don't know the whole song. I don't know the song, but that's ultimately what it is.
I know what the song is. Everything in nature is singing the same exact song, and I call it glorification. All things are glorifying and singing happy songs of joy, and you can see it in all things, in all creatures. And then sometimes,
then it's like this break between, we consider there's a line between animate and inanimate, and the other message that's coming through. There's nothing that's inanimate. It's all animate.
Yep. Yeah. Life flows through the Birkeland currents. Information flows through the Birkeland currents. Electricity and lightning is a Birkeland current, and it's double helix at the front, leaders of the step leaders, or the leaders of the lightning configuration strike. There's a brain in the clouds, and all of this brain in the clouds most strikes happen in the clouds, and then it's very particular and chosen places that get struck for ground strikes. And it has a lot to do with the mycology, the communication of the trees actually release types of chemicals into the air to seed the air to create rain. I'm not kidding. And this comes with lightning strikes to create the right bacterial mycelial network around the trees to continue the tree's life. It's not only about trying to get water, it's about trying to get electricity and fungus to create the right microbial networks for the production of its life and its progeny, its baby trees. It's crazy that it's electric weather, it's electric life, it's electric. I heard that the other day.
That line, it's everything's connected, right? That's the. You know
what petrichor is?
No.
Petrichor is the smell of rain coming. And you know what the smell is? Petrichor. I believe, something like that. Yeah. The smell of rain coming. And you know what you're smelling? You're smelling the chemicals that the plants and the trees are releasing to make them stop sucking up water, because the water is about to come. And they release these chemicals into the air, and that's the smell, the dusty smell that you smell right before rain. Petrichor.
So they're responding, and they sense it's coming, right?
Yep. There's a small one down that says "smell of rain" in the corner right there underneath the. You just right to the right.
Above serendipity.
Yeah, right underneath the image with the.
Right above serendipity.
See, I don't take directions well, so hold on.
Yeah, there was a chemical bond of the smell of.
Yeah, it shows
at the top right.
Right, it's right underneath the image with my face on it right now.
That one.
Now it's directly beneath that. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see it. It's blue.
It's blue.
Oh,
you know.
See, I'm bad. I'm flail around.
It's hard being the captain all the time.
I know. Yeah, look out who's flying here. Yeah.
You know, a few months ago, I read a sci-pop article that said, I haven't actually read the original research paper, but the popular article said that plants can actually warn each other about the danger, like someone is eating their leaves or something.
For sure, that's what it is when you mow the lawn. That wonderful smell that you smell is actually all of the grass blades screaming at their neighbors. It's coming!
Wow,
yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of horrifying. Ever since I learned that, when I mow the lawn, I feel bad for them.
Yeah, we're in a project.
So they're definitely aware that we're out there, you know, when we're coming along.
Right.
They're aware of
that awareness. Yeah. We like to. I mean, you know, we're kind of conditioned to think that it's, you know, it's so beneath us, you know, and then all, you know, you start thinking about, well, you know, that once you start waking up, it's like, what do they notice? Look at how badly I behaved, you know.
Well, here's a good thought.
You know?
Okay, I'm going to draw a couple of paths here that connect. First idea here is the distribution of certain raindrops and the composition of the raindrops that are falling on certain places. Yeah, there's the smell of rain. So the distribution, like if water has a memory, it's going to want to fall on certain areas, and the cloud decides that with the cloud-to-cloud transfer of lightning. And I'm going to branch off and say that Nikola Tesla actually understood he said he understood the key to Revelation, the book of Revelation in the Bible, after a thunderstorm when lightning struck and then an inundation of rain followed. So the connection between electricity discharging and a squall of rain are very much interrelated. And then, like, you know, if there's the same amount of rain that there is, or the same amount of water that there is, and there's always been, or whatever, maybe there's more or less, but whatever, then if there's a memory inside of some of this water, it's going to want to fall specifically on certain places, possibly. So the distribution of the memory of water and electricity, that's interesting. Lightning. Yeah, I know.
I think if Neil was here, he would say something along the lines that, you know, if the cloud is supported by electric field, then when this electric field kind of breaks down in a discharge, then the water would fall down or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
That's something that you would kind of actually would expect in this case. Like if the voltage is no longer there, then the water would just fall down.
So that makes me interested in the spark of life with zinc and the spark of the beginning of a lightning strike and the facilitation of all of these molecules immediately falling. So they could be positively charged all at the same time, and then the strike happens, and then immediately they're reversed and they're negatively charged and they fall.
Well, I always thought that they were, the way that it was described. I mean, when I saw the Easy Water presentation by Dr. Gerald Pollack, I thought that the elements that were present for the rain to occur, but that they congealed when the charge changed, and that's why they turned into liquid water and fell. But that they were in a steam state, a gaseous state, when they're in the cloud. Right? So the charge turned them.
Well, the reason the cloud is there is because something is already condensated, either into water droplets or small ice particles, basically.
It's a vapor, though, right? It's a vapor while it's up there?
No, it's not a vapor. Vapor is invisible. It's not white, vapor is just invisible. But the reason you see white is because there's already a condensation. So there's already water droplets or small particles of ice.
So to continue real quick about Tesla, that event where he said he solved the key to revelation is when he came up with the transformer that we're all playing with, and his idea of what is his tower or whatever it is, the Tesla coil. He came up with the Tesla coil based off of that event, and that's out of his mouth and his words. And
thinking about it as a spiral.
Dude, I have no clue. So think about a thunderstorm, and then think about a transformer, and then think about a Tesla coil, and that's how he came up with it. And think about Revelation, because there's a key there that he said that he found, and if you read it, it's very much intriguing, extremely intriguing about Revelation and flashes of peals of thunder and lightning, and then the gates of heaven are opened. So.
Yeah, well, I just have to make a comment here. No offense here, but I just feel that sometimes, as mainstream has their cult of Einstein and Hawking and so on, the EU people sometimes, have a cult of Tesla or something like that, and it's sometimes kind of disturbing to me.
I agree. We shouldn't have cultic figures.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes, you speak like it's some kind of, I don't know, mystical influence, the mystical knowledge that Tesla had, or something like that. So, and sometimes people say that about Einstein. I mean, like mainstream-minded people.
Yeah, there's directions that they took though that are different, and I think the frequency line of Tesla. To me, it's interesting that what happened to him versus what happened to Einstein, as far as like the general public, how they see it. And of course, it's very easy for someone who's a little bit of a apostate rebellious to go for Tesla, but the frequency elements, looking at things more in that arena, is particularly interesting.
Well,
and then obviously his toroidal, as you can see here, interest in toroids and stuff, space, and then why don't we have his papers, and why did they confiscate them, and all of a sudden intrigue,
Trump.
So.
I mean, there is a unit, a physical unit called Tesla. We don't have a unit of Einstein, so there is an important piece of recognition. And again, we have AC, which is everywhere today, which is a working of Tesla, obviously. So again, and we don't have, maybe we have some, but not so much of a widespread
you
device.
could argue he had a massive effect on technology.
Yeah, Tesla had certainly a massive effect, but Einstein did not.
He did not, right?
Yeah,
he did not. Ultimately,
he had a lot of effect.
He had a lot of effect on culture, though.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and it's mostly because of, again, this cult of, Einstein equals genius today, basically, and genius equals Einstein, and it's kind of very baffling. Yeah,
somewhat parasitic, one might say.
Well, Tesla, nowadays, Tesla could be ascribed to Elon Musk, which is futurist. So, I mean, things get usurped, and unfortunately,
they hijack it, and it's
hijacked.
Yeah, but I mean, this whole thing, the whole, the 369 thing, and then you start playing with the enneagram, and this is pretty interesting to play with.
You want to know something? There's nowhere so far, nobody's found where it's quoted where Nikola Tesla said 369.
Really? What about him going around like going around buildings like 3 times and getting rooms like with that and that kind of thing? I think that's
saying that 3, 6, and 9 were the keys to the.
I've heard that there's no document so far.
I think there is actually, but I'd like to yeah, okay. But I think
though that part of the thing is though that a lot of these people that become deified are so because they're pushed it, like they're presented in a way as if their knowledge didn't come directly from them.
And most of the time,
and they channeled it in some way, which
they say it's channelers,
which makes it seem as if those people are more than human,
superhuman.
And that's but then it's like they're also kind of less because it's like where's thought and consciousness, and then you dive into the whole Rupert Sheldrake line, and that makes it.
I would say it's a way for society to protect itself from these people because for a regular person to accept that some other guy was so smart that the person did not understand what this other guy was talking about. He just kind of, forms this aureole of I don't know, prophecy around this guy and says, well, he was obviously a genius. He was not a regular guy. I don't have to compete with him, Right. He was like marked by the gods. So, okay, it's just other thing. But we regular people, we compete with each other here where we are more or less equal, But these other guys, they're a whole separate breed. So it's kind of I believe, a way of protecting a society from these guys to actually make them, a prophets of sorts.
Inaccessible as far as what they were doing, right? But you read some of what he was talking about, and it's kind of it was more his approach. He had an approach, and that's his writings talk about that quite a bit,
And actually, what I found interesting is that, if something is learned in school, then people are so much dismissive about it. So basically, if you want to fight some rebel thinker, just put him in a school program. And nobody would touch him, afterwards, because people would be so pissed off by him because they've learned about him in school, and school sucks, and so on. So
right.
They would never, they would never go and study him on their own. So it's just a way of basically dismissing those great minds to put them in
marginalizing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't like to paint Nikola Tesla in some type of amazing like deified figure or anything, but I do like certain points as to how he obtained his description of how he obtained ideas for certain things. His understanding is very similar to a lot of the ways that I think particularly, and it's strange because do you guys know the story of how he came up with alternating current? If anyone's familiar with it,
tell us.
So apparently he went out to, I think it was a yogi, something like that, and in India, and he was sun gazing, and he started sun gazing, and he saw that when you look at the sun, there is a blue, a cyan, and a magenta helix, and they counter rotate. If you look at it, if you look at the sun when you're sun gazing, when the sun is low, towards the horizon, which the sunset is beautiful for a reason, to captivate you, to make you look at it, so that you can get that vitamin D and those natural information straight from the sun. Side note. But when you look at the sun, you can see that these counter rotate very rapidly. It starts spiraling one way, then it starts spiraling the other way, then it starts spiraling the other way, and that's how he came up with his idea of alternating current.
Okay.
By sun gazing.
Right. And when you look at that kind of thing, and it's often, where's that idea come from, and you know what he was playing around with, obviously, because it was a major radio, one of the initial radio pioneers and everything, and that whole idea of kind of tuning in and listening. And I think this is part of one of his quotes too. It's the listening quote. Just instead of listen for the answer, don't.
But then again, I think we're missing here a very important thing, that he actually have thought about the currents and the fields and so on a lot. So he had already this engine of thinking running very fast. He just needed some sort of inspiration of sorts.
Right.
So when he saw this thing, everything just fell into place, where it already was prepared for that. So a regular person, if he just or she stared at the sun, he or she wouldn't have had this intuition, because they weren't thinking about it.
They're not even looking at it. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And he's a good example for Eugene, of someone, he was pretty sickly when he was a kid, so that here's an example of like perhaps that, obviously someone who's impacted us quite a bit, but he may have been euthanized because he wouldn't be considered a healthy specimen.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree very much with Eugene here. I'd like to add something, that Tesla, first of all, had a very good education, especially for those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree very much with Eugene that everything that you can read about him, how his work went, the stories, his inventions, everything testifies of a very dedicated, thoughtful figure that had his own way of thinking, of looking at things. And yeah, sure, he got inspiration from nature. Who didn't? So yeah, I'm very much agreeing here with Eugene that Tesla, I believe, was in my mind, a great thinker, without trying to put him on a pedestal like an Einstein, right? But in my mind, he was a great person because he actually very much worked for it. And I don't think he got it through a momentarily clarification of something that happened or whatever. This man worked for
I agree completely. I just want to say that I admire Tesla in the sense that he's a really brilliant thinker. I just don't think he deserves to be, a sort of a put as a paragon of some things that he might not even agree with, like when someone puts him on a banner of sorts, and so on. So But I definitely
it's
agree.
It's a distortion that happens. It's a distortion that happens when someone has, they get the fame associated with that kind of thing. There's a distortion always, I think, from what they actually are.
Yeah, like for example, again, I admire Friedrich Nietzsche, and I'm a basically a follower of his. But I dislike when people say that, you know, Nazis were inspired by Nietzsche. Nietzsche is a philosopher of Nazis. It's just a complete bullshit.
Well, yeah.
Absolutely.
But that's superficial.
I mean,
that's actually
yeah.
it's prejudiced and bigoted and stupid, because you really haven't. But you'll jump onto that polarity, and then it'll become an axe. You know, a dangerous one to walk around, right?
So in this regard, it's kind of painful for me to see how various not very smart people, so to speak, put Nikola Tesla as their leader, so to speak, and they're kind of ruining his reputation through their, you know, not very reasonable actions or thoughts. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, what do you? The only way to do it is to you know, we end up as things progress here. It seems like we're becoming a little bit of a voice of something anyway. But it's like point in the direction of, you know, do some self investigation and find out for yourself. This is the beauty of the internet. It's like, you know, don't take my word for it. Just look it up. You know, find out for yourself. Cross reference. See both sides of the picture. And then gain your you know. From that, you can gain your position for that, you know, at that point. So definitely interesting character. I mean, but the question continues to come up. It's like, what the hell happened there, you know, with him? Why did he? Was someone who was so influential? How did he die a pauper? You know.
Well, he was pretty old already by the time that he died, so he definitely did not die like unnoticed. I mean, he already did a bunch of stuff, again, all these patents, so he already influenced the industry a lot. So it's not like his work was discovered like centuries after, you know.
Right. But he actually had to suffer for what he did, you know.
And he didn't really
compared to like Einstein didn't have to suffer very much, from my understanding, for what he did.
Yeah, from what I understand, he didn't really like human interaction, and he thought a lot of it made him dumber. And towards the end of his life, he was kind of a shut-in and a recluse. And he had relationships with pigeons, going so far as to say that something about he loves this one pigeon like he loves a wife, and his communication with birds, which is also really interesting because there's a lot of avid aviators.
Mike Tyson's into pigeons. It's a homing pigeons.
By that time, he was already kind of reclusive, drawn into his thinking and work. And when you're basically treated the way he was several times, would you not lose your faith in humanity? Become friends with pigeons? I'm just saying.
I haven't lost my faith in humanity, and I'm friends with some pigeons.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
I adore birds. I actually, I'm thinking about taking a crow home, but
a crow. They're very interesting.
Yeah. I'm living in a multi-apartment building, so I'm not sure. It's probably a bad idea, but one day I'm going to have a crow. Yeah.
As a pet?
Maybe when I move into other.
Can you domesticate a crow?
Yeah,
really?
Totally.
Wow.
And they're so smart.
Will it stand on your shoulder?
Yeah, and they're doing all kinds of weird things, and they're basically one of the probably smartest beings on Earth. Yeah. Aside of, monkeys and dolphins, the crows are probably the third.
Right.
They have a language and they talk to each other, different than the normal calling that we hear, that it's loud.
And
they have a language.
Ravens are probably a little bit smarter than crows, but ravens live very lonely life mostly, and they live a little bit longer. So probably it's because of that they're smarter. But crows are very social. They're always, found in bunches, and they recognize faces. By the way, it's proven that they can recognize human faces and remember them for years actually. So
wow.
If a person, if the same person appears before the same crow, it would remember him like even 5 years later. And it would even teach other crows, like the next generation, to recognize the same face if it's important. If the guy harmed them somehow or otherwise gave them food or something. I'm so fascinated by these birds.
Yeah. Hunters will tell you that if you point a stick towards a crow or a raven, they don't fly away. They know it's a stick. But if you point a gun at them, choof, gone they are. They know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, they create their own tools easily. Like recently, there was a research that like how raven can actually craft an instrument from 4 different parts to extract food from container or something. And they can like open trash bins easily. Like they can do whole lots of stuff. They're just super smart. Again, I just love.
I mean, look at that. It's totally going like, okay, the law of buoyance tells me here, as I throw this one in, it comes up.
Right. He's experimentalist. Yeah.
They're almost as cool as cats, and I actually think they're cooler than cats because they're dinosaurs, man.
Yeah.
They're dinosaurs, man.
Yeah, but do they do the work of a homing pigeon?
Well, I'm sure that they can have
different tool, different bird.
There's temperament right there. You see the temperament thing, right?
And they also like to play. I saw a video when a crow was sliding down a snowy roof, on a piece of some cardboard or something, and it slided down, fell to the ground, and it took this cardboard and flew over the top again and slided down again, just for fun, like children do.
Yeah. That caw, but man, it could, it's like a sawtooth, it's got edges to it. Their voice,
They're definitely a sentinel, that's for sure.
Sentient, you wanted to say?
A sentinel, a sentient sentinel. Yeah.
They're what sends the messages. Game of Thrones, you send a raven. You send you're talking about like homing pigeons and sending messages.
Yeah, raven is a very smart bird. Yeah.
They've been used for messaging before.
Have you guys heard of here in Michigan? They built a telescope and they aimed it at Draco, the constellation Draco, and crows nested inside of the telescope, and they all started having red eyes. All of the crows started having red eyes because of nesting in there, and now they call them the Draco crows because of their adaptation. It's literally an adaptation because of the way that the telescope was aimed at there. Somehow it turned their eyes red.
I want to see proof of that.
Change them.
I'd like to see proof of that.
So that makes you wonder if we were subjected to magnified light from certain constellations, would it genetically manipulate us and genetically change us?
Good question. So there's a good. That's a pregnant pause for sure.
Can you look up the Draco crows from Michigan?
Are they? It's a YouTube thing. I want to see what that. I want to see what this crow.
Sure.
This crow's screwing with these puppies. I want to see this.
Whenever, I mean, it's a cool genetic
It's kind of a mean. See, they got a mean
manipulation,
spirit to them, though, too, right?
Yeah, they're badass. They're badass.
It's like, what are you
I
doing?
love
What are you
them
doing, that
for
poor
that.
puppy?
It just wants to play. It just
Yeah.
wants to have part in the fun, you know. It's seeing that they're having fun.
But it's pretty. It's look at the stance. Is that fun? Is he
It's
playing?
like-
Is he playing?
Well, maybe there's food and it also wants to eat
Yeah.
or something.
Look out!
It just says, "Hey, I'm up for the party today." What do you
Oh,
guys?
grab the tail.
No?
I don't know. It's pretty funny. And
Jim,
you think about their
what do you
percent.
know about the constellation of Draco? Because I remember Jim was talking about Draco a while back, and I'm curious because I've also heard about Draco blood and the dragons and different bloodlines and things like that.
Yeah, not much other than the constellation is the center of the precessional axis, at least for now.
It's the center of the precessional axis.
So are we going towards it?
Yeah, in general, that's the way we're headed in the long term. That's like the helical axis that we're traveling along is right now in that direction.
Do you mean the peculiar velocity, or? I mean, the direction where we're going in the galaxy is, from my calculations, it means we're going somewhere near the star of Deneb, which is Cygnus, the Cygnus constellation.
I was always under the impression that we were headed towards Cygnus as well.
What about
That it
Virgo?
was the top of the direction we were going.
Oh, actually, Draco is bordering Cygnus, so it's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, see, Draco's like the center. If you look at the like if we're traveling in a helical path, at any time we're not. Draco would be kind of like the helical axis, so we're never actually traveling directly towards it. We're spiraling around that, so it's always we're gonna sweep out. The point we're headed is going to sweep out a circle around that axis over time.
But that doesn't. It's not proven yet. I mean, there's a notion that we have this motion around the galactic center, which is more or less circular, eccentricity of 0.1. But we're also moving up and down from the plane of galaxy. But this notion that we're doing that up and down is not proven at this point, as far as I know, at least. It's a sort of a hypothesis, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It's a best guess in the mainstream based on our current motion, and then they just try to plot that onto a long-term elliptical orbit around the center of the galaxy. But we're actually going. I mean, I'm quite convinced, both from the mythology and the mainstream observations, if you look at them, that we're moving around the Pleiades, and that if you look at that axis towards Draco, that is 90 degrees away from the Pleiades. In other words, since the Pleiades is in that stream coming down through the local chimney, that will have a magnetic field wrapped around it, and then our local helical motion should be mapped onto that, and that's what I see going on, and it matches the instantaneous motion of the solar system, but it matches what we observe of precession over time. Like if you even in the last few years, if you're a very careful observer, you can see which way the pole is moving. And that matches with this idea of us moving basically on a toroidal path around the Pleiades. That's basically what's going on. And the mainstream does see stars all around us circling in that direction, even though it doesn't seem to make sense. They just haven't put it all together yet. Even on their own observations, there's enough to put that together if they would read each other's papers.
So you're saying that our peculiar velocity, like with respect to the local stars, is precessing around the Pleiades. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. Our precessional axis, our current precessional axis, is 90 degrees away from the Pleiades, which is what you would expect if that's caused by us spiraling around a background magnetic field. That magnetic field is wrapped around the Pleiades. That's the path you would expect. And it's stated very clearly in all the esoteric and mythological stuff. The Hopi just say flat out, the Pleiades is the center. The name of one of the stars there, Alcyone, supposedly in original translation means the central sun. And I mean, it's always been clear from the mythology and esoteric knowledge that that's the case. It's only the mainstream that's saying, no, there's not enough mass there to keep us bound to that. But the mainstream independently found that, like Gould's belt, which is a bright ring of stars all the way around us, they know that ring of stars is rotating around the Pleiades. And they also know independently that we are inside that ring. So that gives you the whole absurd idea that how can this ring of stars surrounding us on all sides be bound to the Pleiades and not have us inside that ring be bound to the Pleiades, since we have a slower motion than those stars? It's absurd. It would be like independently, if we didn't know that the Earth was bound to the sun, but someone discovered that Jupiter was circling around the sun, and Saturn out there beyond us was circling around the sun, and the asteroid belt was circling around the sun, and then still not get the idea that Earth is circling around the sun. That's how absurd their ideas are right now. They see all this matter around us on all the sides, circling around the Pleiades. But because there's nobody working on all these dynamics together, they just don't have it. You get astronomers focused on how the sun is moving relative to our local group of stars. Like the peculiar motion you're talking about. Others that are worried about, how that fits into the rotation curve of the galaxy and so on. But there's not really a putting together of all the observations, even in the mainstream thing. That's why you get these quirks. One I was trying to point out earlier is what the mainstream has this idea that stars are moving around the center of the galaxy, right? And then they need dark matter to explain that. Well, another group is looking at the local dynamics, and they realize they can explain those using some dark matter. But what they haven't done together is the guys that are working on galactic rotation need one distribution of dark matter in the galaxy, and the other group that's working on local dynamics needs another distribution of dark matter, and they're not the same. You can't do that. You can't say,
why not?
Depending on the scale of the problem, I need dark matter to be here and then not there. So besides the absurdity of dark matter, they also have that. If they would read each other's paper, they would know that each group.
They should use their junk DNA to figure out what dark matter is.
Yeah, it's like if you give somebody a fudge factor like dark matter, and let all these different people use it in different ways wherever they need it, that's basically what's going on. And so all you have to sit back. Even if you were willing to believe in dark matter, you can just look through all these papers and say, hey, wait a minute, you can't put it here. These guys can't put it here. And then these guys can't say, no, it's not there. It's like in the galactic rotation curves, to solve those, you have to assume that there's no significant amount of dark matter anywhere in the inner galaxy, including by us. But then people working on the local chimney in Gould's belt, they'll say, yep, it was a clump of dark matter that came down through our local part of the galaxy, and that's what caused this. So right there, you have it just doesn't work. Even if you give them the fudge factor, you can't throw that in and take it out in all these different equations. That's what's absurd about it.
So I got a good question. So is there like
we'll be the judge of that.
Oh well, I mean, I guess yeah. Whatever. I have a question that I thought was
That's much better.
Here's an interesting.
I have lots of questions.
Okay, may I propose a question?
But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So, do you think that there's an inductive capacitance or an inductive current that's pulling us towards the constellation of Draco? Because if the Birkeland current's moving towards that direction, should there be a rotation and a counter rotation of at least some sort of attraction or charge?
So let's phrase the question another way. Let's just try phasing it one more way, where it might be more.
I think that we're being in. I think that there's an inductive. I think that there's an inductive current that's pulling us towards Draco.
What do you think? What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, that's probably right. Like if you're on a toroidal path yourself, if you assume that the sun is on a toroidal path, that would have to be like it's not like we're flowing along an electric field from one place to another. If you're on a toroidal path, that really is inductance that you're talking about, then that's really driving the motion.
So then there's back and forth currents already going on from Earth to Draco, and that brings us right back to the crows turning their eyes red and changing them genetically manipulating them. And what if we were to do the same thing with another lens and subject humans or animals or something to the lensing effect of Draco? Would it change their DNA as well?
Are you sure this is here? Let's see.
You're from Michigan, buddy?
Yeah, we're Heather and I here are chilling up in the mitten.
Yeah,
Michigan.
The mitten.
He lives like an hour away from my house. Yeah, I'm in the city and he's in the country.
Detroit metro area.
It's like Green Acres, right?
Yeah, I heard it's a place to be.
I'll have to find the article and post it to our chat or
Yeah, off the bat, I don't see it, but it'd be interesting.
Yeah, when I read it, it blew my mind because it's right on the plaque of the telescope facing Draco.
So you're around Detroit? Where?
I live right outside of Detroit, like probably 3 miles outside of the Detroit city limit, and Buddy lives out by closer to like between here and Lansing.
The only thing I know about Michigan basically is that, Iggy Pop and Anthony Kiedis.
Oh, Iggy Pop.
Come on, dude, the MC5. Can't leave the MC5.
MC5, oh yeah, of course. Kick out the jam, mother.
That's right. Detroit Rock City.
We want to hear your band, Eugene.
Yeah, we're actually thinking about making a cover of this particular song, Kick Out the Jams. Yeah. And we're already playing, I Want to Be Your Dog by Stooges. And so
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know the one I love is Passenger.
Yeah,
Iggy Pop. I love that
it's
song.
sort of a cult song. But my favorite song by Iggy is "Your Pretty Face Is Going to Hell," probably.
Some of the interviews with him are awesome.
And if you want a little bit more punk rock in Detroit, Patti Smith still lives here.
I just saw an interview. She's talking about her meeting Bobby Fischer.
Oh wow!
They ended up being friends. She was like a book. She ended up she in New York, right? She's definitely a New Yorker, and she was in a kind of esoteric bookstore, and then like spent a lot of her, that was how she was making ends meet. and they linked up, and she ended up being the person who would like send him, because he always was asking for like really exotic books, and she would find them for her. She would find them for him and then send them to him. So they had an interesting relationship.
But anyway, I had a question for Jim. So when you're saying that we're processing around the Pleiades, what exactly do you mean? What exactly is processing? Because, I mean, Pleiades, they're very close to us. I mean, you can see them with naked eye, which means they're like 100 light years or less away or something like that.
Actually, they're supposedly like 387 to 425 light years away by that.
Well, okay, less than 1,000, let's say.
Right.
So what exactly is processing, as you say, around them? Is that the vector of motion of the sun, or what? What is processing?
Well, a good framework, if you know where the solar system fits in. Remember where the Pleiades is compared to the ecliptic plane. It's like 4 degrees off the ecliptic. So we're
they're in Taurus, basically. Taurus,
right.
Which is a zodiacal constellation.
Right. So what's interesting is that the motion of that constellation too, compared to us, it's very, very steeply inclined to the ecliptic plane. Like if you look at its proper motion in right ascension and declination, it looks like it's moving, down steeply through the ecliptic plane, which means that if we were really moving around it, then we would have to have a motion along the solar system axis. That's where I was before I even came to the EU, is that I was already aware of this idea that, okay, we're moving around the Pleiades. You can't read books like Hamlet's Mill even or anything without at least coming to that conclusion. So then the next thing you can do as an astronomer is say, if that really is, are really bound to that, we could look at how it's moving compared to us or how we're moving compared to them. And you can calculate an orbit from that. You can tell which direction we're moving, and you can tell our orbital period. And that already is where I got to the weird idea is I said, this was when I even just had the gravity idea in my mind, is if we were on an orbit around the Pleiades, what wouldn't make sense is that we would be in a face-on orbit around it. In other words, in the gravity-only model, where if we were in orbit, you might think we were formed in the same gas cloud or we spun off from them. You would expect us to be orbiting more in the ecliptic plane, like us spiraling around that way instead of traveling face on. So that's the part that didn't make sense. But I matched the orbital period. I calculated the orbital period as being like 26.3 million years. And that fit with the mainstream's like mass extinction cycle. So I knew I was onto something with that. But that's when I realized that when you get the EU ideas and you see that once you see that the Pleiades is the center of that local chimney, that's the key observation that you're stuck with. And you can be skeptical of everything I've said up to this point. But if you look at the local chimney and you see that there's this hourglass shaped structure, look at where, not the local interstellar cloud, just go to local chimney, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, David, not to tell
no
you
problem.
What to do this.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's all right.
But when you look at the local chimney,
you do it very nicely, Jim. So
well,
it's all about the tone ultimately.
Right. I just get carried away when I'm excited about something.
It's good. If I could spell chimney, I'd be dangerous.
You have problems with spelling.
I do. But it's kind of interesting because the things that come up are interesting.
If you type in local chimney Sol station, I think they have the best image.
Good thing there are no porn stars with such names.
Oh, I'm telling you. Yeah, look out.
Yeah, see the one on the far left there. That's
This is one we've used. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you accept that we're in that hourglass shaped structure, you don't have to know anything. Don't agree with anything I've said so far. The idea you should have already, if you're looking at it in EU terms, is how can that structure, if we're inside this hourglass shaped structure, how can our motion not have anything to do with that? In the mainstream idea, the sun is just cooking around in the galactic plane. That hourglass shaped tube that we're in has nothing to do with the sun's direction of motion. Now, if you look at this though, and if you assume that this object has a helical magnetic field around it, or a Bessel function magnetic field centered on that chimney axis, you will find that the sun's Earth's precessional axis, which as Walter Crutton had pointed out is the solar system precessional axis, that matches a helical magnetic field in that chimney. So
Excuse me. Can you repeat that name? Who said that?
That was Walter Crutton, and he got his ideas from like more, again, Eastern tradition, but that idea too was that there's some magnetic center that we're moving around, but he knew from that knowledge that precession had something to do with the sun's path. Now he made the mistake of going back to the mainstream gravitational model and trying to make sense of it, and he came up with this theory that it was the sun must have a binary companion, and that's what's causing our whole solar system to precess. But what he did a good job of is he did show a whole number of arguments that the whole solar system is precessing. So it's this idea you learn in school that the Earth is precessing like a spinning top, besides the fact that it doesn't make sense because a spinning top precesses about an axis in the direction of gravity, and Earth would be precessing about an axis 90 degrees away from the gravitational tug. So right there, the spinning top model that was a mistake that Newton came to, and it was totally wrong back then. And everything since then has been a patch.
But then again, look at this picture. It says that Taurus is to the left, so Pleiades is also to the left, right? They're farther from us than the galactic center. They're basically the opposite of galactic center with respect to us. So, but this very same picture shows that the sun's going downwards, sort of, and in the opposite direction with respect to the Pleiades. That's what I think it shows.
The sun isn't moving down through there. What the mainstream does know is along that chimney axis, that's where there is a stream of stars, including one of the streams.
It's only the axis. Sorry, yeah.
Right, yeah. And stars are streaming down through there, but the sun's motion is consistent with being around that. Now, that's the problem. Is that, as you say, that Taurus and the Pleiades are away from galactic center. So either way, if the mainstream is right, we could be moving, if you want, into this picture and then eventually curving to the right. Whereas if the EU idea is right, we could be moving straight into this picture and then curving to the left. But either way, our instantaneous motion is going to be the same. That's why it's hard to detect right now which is going on, because if we are between two objects, it is hard to tell which object you're orbiting, even if you were in a circular orbit around one object or the other.
Okay, so basically your general idea is that we're kind of rotating around the Pleiades as we go around the center of the galaxy. Is that correct?
Yeah, in general, the Pleiades stream is what's coming. That's like the defining axis of this chimney. That's really the main current through there is is that. And the Pleiades cluster, all those bright stars are down in the narrow part of that hourglass, which is where you would expect all that current to be funneled in. So what I'm saying is that the sun's motion is just, we are spiraling along the magnetic field of that, so that like there's a magnetic field wrapped around that. And we are, over the long period, over like 24,000 years, we spiral around that local magnetic field.
So
I just want to note again how this pattern resembles the squatter man. You know, these two circles between the legs and arms, so to speak, and we're at the very center of it. You know, can you notice the right. Sort of this chromosome X? Yeah. And two dots.
Yeah. Right. But this is the density too. You get this toroidal cut section. You know.
But I just want to thank you, Jim, for it's really kind of made me think about many things. So I'll definitely consider what you said. Yeah, regardless of anything. Yeah, it was a really good insight what you said.
Yeah, there's then those few little quirks again. I know I keep harping on these, but like the Pleiades distance problem, and if you look at which way that is, that can be explained because by that the plasma bending of light in that direction, that there should be a lot of plasma, even if we can't detect it otherwise, it should be right towards Taurus from us, and that's what gives them those radically different parallax from their direct parallax to their relative parallax. That's what throws the two off is the bending of light by the plasma in that pinch. Again, and here's where the mainstream is wrong, is they see that inside there are all these hot blue stars, so that would mean a lot of current flow. But in the mainstream description of that chimney, they think it's really sparse, even compared to the material out around it. They think it's, even as far as plasma, that's a relatively hollow tube. And I'm saying, nope, it's not. It's the opposite. There's higher plasma density, but because of that way that dark mode currents work, and it hides pretty much all the charged matter from us because of that, as long as it's in that minimum energy configuration. That's what's going on. So the plasma density is higher. What the mainstream sees of plasma density is lower because of that. So it has the illusion of being a hollow tube, but it's not.
So what I believe I'm understanding here is the induction is induced due to the hourglass-like shape, and that's what's propelling or creating our forward momentum inside of the local chimney. Is it that hourglass shape that's creating that type of induction, or is it something else? Because I'm wondering.
Well, see, the motion shouldn't be. If you go back to even the mainstream ideas on magnetism before they screwed up and started doing that magnetic Greek connection and stuff, when you first learn about magnetic fields, and they still teach you kind of right in the beginning, is that a magnetic field shouldn't add kinetic energy to something. In other words, if the sun is charged and moving along, all that the magnetic field should do is be able to change its direction. It shouldn't. It can only be the electric field that causes the motion, or if it's already in motion, that the magnetic field can just govern the spiraling. So,
yeah, they say exactly that. Yeah.
Right. So now the idea here is that it doesn't really say where the sun came from. You do see that if the sun was already there or in some form, or the material was already there, and then this current comes down through the galactic plane, the sun would be caught up in that, whether the sun was created in that or existed before. either way, the sun's motion is going to be governed by the magnetic field of that Birkeland current that came down through there. So now whether you'd have to know a lot of solar system history to know where the sun came from before that, but there's no way to get that from its motion, in other words.
So to me, it kind of seems like there is, like, the sun could be bioluminescent and it is being cavitated through this local chimney. Cavitation works in the exact same manner, and it has that type of propulsion to it. Because either it's being induced by something else from another body, or it has some sort of mechanism to propel itself. The sun,
there's this process of sonoluminescence where you have a cavity, a spherical, basically aquarium, where you generate these spherical sound waves, and you have bubbles in the middle of it that burst constantly, periodically, and also emit light at the same time.
Right.
So maybe that's kind of the same effect that we have with stars or something.
I think so.
That's sort of a long shot, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, we see it. If we can see it on the micro scale, and we can scale it up, and we see that it behaves similarly on the macro scale, it's very much like plasma as far as scalability.
Yeah, and even in regular sonoluminescence in Earth's experiments in the lab, you would see temperatures like 5,000 degrees easily, just because of sound focusing in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it kind of makes you think about those, Chladni plates, where you have this vibration organizing matter, supposedly in rings, like where the planets are, and so on and so forth. So maybe actually the sound is the thing, that organizes matter in like the stars that shine in the middle of all of it, and the planets that are formed around the sound in plasma.
You get the constructive interference.
Now that I can ascribe to that. Sorry.
Yeah, we're both on this. We're definitely this is the song.
Yeah.
This is part of the song we're singing, isn't it?
This is where we're all headed, man. It is sound, ultimately, and it's spoken into existence. We have the power inside of our voice and our vocal cords to speak life or speak death into all things. We do.
Well, when I get around to doing that.
There he goes. Where the hell have you been? Yeah.
Hi. I see that you're talking about my favorite subject.
We missed you.
I
missed you so much.
What's cavitation with body sculpting? I'm seeing all these things, and then I'm seeing all these like torsos. It's like,
doesn't this take you back in time to that thing where they vibrate your whole body in some belt, in the 1960s?
Right.
Like blah, 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 you saw women all shaking there.
Yeah.
The reason I brought this up is because ultimately there's a guy that I'm friend with, Big Bo Jackson, something like that, and he really emphasizes the fact that the sun is sonoluminescence, and it is cavitation that we are being drawn towards Draco, that we are being induced through this current, or either we're propelling ourselves through cavitation, or there's an induction going on here. And that's what I want to get to the bottom of.
I think setting up the lab experiment to see it actually and be able to set up kind of a wide range of situations where you can adjust different parameters. This would give us a lot of insight, personally.
I love the space guys. They're the ones that can do it. Because
I'm
they're the ones
sorry.
that put the little, symbol, like put the piece of material there floating in space and put a plasma around it and watch it organize. Because as soon as you're in gravity, all the weight falls to one side. It was on the ISS, those Russian plasma dudes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, go on. Sorry, whoever I interrupted.
I'm sorry. Have anybody found this Red Eye Krause video, whatever? No, not yet.
No.
Okay.
Haven't attached it yet, but I'm very curious as to building some sort of structure that induces this light or conducts this light and genetically changes the material of the creatures that are observing it.
I mean, it just kind of sounds like, something from H.P. Lovecraft or something.
Yeah, but that's always exciting. It's always exciting to play with, right?
Sci-fi,
Yeah.
but I'll look it up right now. I got to remember the city that I was in.
I think Neil was referencing to plasma on ISS, no?
Oh yeah, it was just like a
Sonoluminescence.
little plasma video, and they were doing.
Yeah,
their thing, and-
there's a video of dusty plasma on
Yeah.
ISS.
Is
Yeah,
it? Okay.
and
I remember that. Like it crystallizes, right? It forms.
and
these
it forms, it pulls
crystals.
material together just because. I mean, let's face it. If you wanted to actually do something along those lines in real life, you're on the Earth. You can't put a piece of material in the stream because it will be pulled by gravity to the ground, right? There's not electromagnetism has a force, and it'll cause things to spin, and it will cause things to move at the right angle to the current and all that stuff. Ampere's law of yada yada yada. But when you start throwing it into gravity, of course, because what we want to really study is imagine like a bunch of BBs in a current, and then watching them pinch around themselves in some shotgun out in different directions, as the pinch hits, or watch the bezel function happen in slow motion at lower current, so we can actually witness it spiraling around, and so forth, because we don't have that ability nearly as much as because of gravity. Basically, we cannot see the electric field form around a BB or something, like a little shotgun pellet, floating there in the plasma, stuff that we would want to do, watching it self-organize and so forth. And it's just not something we can do. The closest thing that we saw is, what was it, that David LaPointe's video on the primer fields, where he puts a piece of plexiglass down and then watches them organize on that plane. But we can't watch them freely, follow if it is the bezel function or whatever. And of course, here I am always debating this wonderful thing with Jim, because, what can you do when you're dealing with the bezel function itself, which I took a time to actually try to figure out, which I still don't know fully, but you have to deal with, like we talking about, you guys were probably just talking about when I walked in, Ampere's law and stuff like that in relation to this, because there's more than just that one rule. There has to be other things. Like I realized that if you have the capacitance of an electric field in the solar system, there it is. Yeah, that stuff. But if you have a capacitance of an electric field in the solar system, DC is automatically blocked because there's a capacitance field. You have to break down that to get through it. And capacitance won't necessarily allow this stuff to flow through it because it blocks DC, but it doesn't block AC. So the energy that field can still pump through. And that's why I think we see the pumping action of the heliopause as Voyager went through it, and the fact that we see neutral atoms along the edge that seem to get more positive or whatever as we approach the poles of the heliopause, and it seems to be getting pumped that way. And I think that's what this pumping action is, going in and out, if you know what I mean. It's sort of like a waveform that's influencing all the bodies inside. It's just a complex thing that we're only now getting our handle on.
So basically in this video, I just want a short comment. There was this sort of a viral video like 5 years ago, this particular video, how dusty plasmas behave in zero gravity. It's like they form sort of kind of crystals, they organize themselves in these patterns that are very crystal-like, and that there was a lot of conspiracy theories around it, like plasma is actually, some sort of super intelligent whatever, and so on and so forth. But again, really it's interesting how, again, plasma, dusty plasma behaves in zero gravity, and you can see here like clear patterns of repulsion and attraction that forms these.
There's a pumping action right there.
Features. Although I'm not sure. I have searched for it, but I haven't found any like papers on this experiment. Like what were they doing in particular? Were they like magnetic fields or electric fields around this plasma or whatever? I just don't know what's happening here.
Right.
I just know that it's plasma and it's in zero gravity, but otherwise.
Well, I think that this would give us an idea how to see. For example, we were talking about this before about the rings of a planet, or watching the layout of the asteroid belt. Because they're going to come close together. And then we even see some instances of that now, where we have two asteroids spinning around each other, having a ring system together. That's just,
yeah,
they're related.
We've actually seen more than two. I think there was some asteroids that have 5 satellites or something like that, and
just
also
crazy.
Yeah, and also systems of rings. Yeah, and
So that means that
we've also found
they're Berkeley currents too.
So,
So that means that they're Berkeley current chimney systems as well, too, right?
Well,
You
it
know,
looks
yeah,
like a
no.
field.
Well, look at that. Actually, I think it was a sort of an invention of the author of this.
That
program.
seemed like it. Yeah, that was a different.
Yeah,
that was
inserted
that
in
had.
there.
He just kind of made
Yeah,
it
let's
up. Like,
let's
like
apply
kind of
this.
like
Let's apply this
yeah,
fast.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
It's again, you have to be very careful when you're looking
Yeah.
at it was again propagated mostly by those conspiracy kind of channels. in
Yeah.
Russia.
Well, I see the CERN thing, right? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Like, what's that
So
doing there?
again, that was probably the reason. I think what actually happened was this small experiment that they did on the ISS, which was later, sort of enlarged by this conspiracy propaganda on the Russian side. And I actually remember somebody posting it on Thunderbolts on Facebook, and I did a small research of my own on this topic, and I hadn't found any actual research papers on that. So I said, well, I don't know, it's just some sort of whateverness.
Whateverness.
Did they just
that
send
old
up this-
whateverness is always a problem. Yeah.
Well, that's a little weird, because you don't get. I mean, it's not like it was a private plaything that they said bring up like a book. Oh yeah, one thing you can bring up to the space station will be what, a tub that you could do plasma experiments in, and dusty plasma. No,
it actually might be a private, because they're doing all sorts of experiments. Yeah,
I'll just shut up then.
You can basically pay NASA or Roscosmos and do whatever you like in orbit, just if you pay enough, So it could have been whoever else designed, not their own. The astronauts are just workhorses that do whatever they're ordered to. So yeah.
Short order
Well,
cooks.
now I've learned.
So I found the answer to your H.P. Lovecraft type of that might be impossible, and I posted the link to our chat in this group.
Yeah, there's a Draco viewer, Boyne City, Michigan. Yeah, I see it.
Yep. So if you want to look at that,
Okay,
we
Boyne
can.
City?
Yeah.
Do you know where that is?
Yep, that's where they have the Morel Mushroom Festival every year.
This telescope looks like some contraption from Warcraft.
Steampunk. Yeah.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Steampunk.
It's a giant laser to shoot the moon out of the sky.
What is this thing? Come on.
Or to shoot our tests, you know.
What are you talking about here?
If you look at the article that I sent, it describes how they weren't crows, they were ravens, which are even smarter than crows, which are kind of the same type of thing.
They're close, yeah. But ravens are a little bit smarter, yeah. Perhaps because, again, they live a bit longer, or perhaps because they have a little bit more brain tissue to them than crows, yeah.
Or maybe that they were imbued by great power by Edgar Allan Poe.
But
the crap out of people.
Yeah, or
Nevermore.
Was it son of Bruce Lee? This guy in the movie Raven. Brendan Lee, yeah.
That whole scene, whatever happened there, that was pretty interesting.
Got some ominous something to it.
The crow.
Yeah.
You know what I love most about that movie was, and I know about the comments about something esoteric, is that if you watch the commentary things about it, he has this wonderful speech that he talks about living forever and the moments that are change your life and how many times you will see the sunset again before you die. All of these things. He had a conversation about it while he was filming the movie. Okay. So he's talking to an interviewer like this, right? And he goes, yes. And he goes, and you'll think you live forever, but it all seems limitless. And that's the mystery of life or something. And then he's dead. That was the last
and don't you see a lot of similarities between him and Heath Ledger as Joker in Batman?
Yeah,
it's kind of they're kind of almost the same person, you know, to me at least.
Yeah, it's like,
and then
to me it's kind of like we live in a
because Heath Ledger was edging. He was starting something here. And that was like, it was like, I caught wind of it about 6 months before, and then all of a sudden, like, he's out. And what happened to him, you know?
Yeah.
So. I suppose if I lived where you lived, I'd believe in conspiracies like you wouldn't believe, because I mean, some of these things are really creepy.
Yeah, well, I'm right near Laurel. I'm right near Laurel Canyon, and it's like that's where the whole, the conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick and everything, with the.
Yeah, that one's the big one.
And that's right. They, it's like. I could walk up to where they say that they were shooting it.
Well, you could also say there's a post 9/11 world, and then there's a post Dark Knight world, and it's almost like there was a transformation point when Dark Knight was released.
Actually, I think if you want to go right back to it, it's really very simple. There's a pre X-Files world, and there's a post X-Files world. Okay, because the X-Files had caused everyone to lose their collective shit over time because of the conspiracy aspect of it and the UFOs and all that stuff. But if I have these wonderful movies that are supposed to be like that from like the 80s, and they're so pathetic.
What about that guy?
It gave authority
to... It's like, what?
I don't know.
You're going to mix those two?
It ultimately gave authority to the CIA and the FBI, and then from there on out, it's been like, oh, if they show up, there's no questions; they have all authority.
Oh yeah, like the MIB, like
exactly.
That movie. Yeah. Did you watch the MIB episode of the X-Files? I bet you if you type this in right here, I bet you'll find it. Go
I've actually watched all of the seasons, all of the episodes. What was it in this particular one?
MIB X-Files. And then it will be. That's. No, hold on. It would be. Type in Jesse Ventura right after that.
Wasn't the smoker like the undercover Men in Black through the whole series?
Smoker's always the enemy.
The Cancer Man was his original name. Ooh. The actual guy that I liked better was his boss, but he died during the filming of it. He was called the Distinguished Gentleman. That's the scene. See, go up a little bit. It says just even.
This one,
right? Up a little bit higher.
But all these right guys, they've
Planet Venus, the Planet Venus.
They've like traded their children to the
aliens.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
This one, Planet Venus.
No.
Yeah, they're doing this thing, and he's telling a story about what happened. He goes, okay, let me tell you what happened, guys. This is what happened. So this car comes in, and then Jesse Ventura gets out, and this guy's, he's describing the story from his point of view, you know. He goes, no, what you just saw was light reflected from the planet Venus across swamp gas. That's what we're going to tell everybody, and that's what you have to believe. You know, like, what? And of course, Scully's like, nope. Anyway, it's just interesting, and they made it kind of comical, but it's that kind of thing. You're right. This spooky government authority thing has really freaked people out, and that X-Files was a big part of that, because of, you know, you think that they can pull that off. You know, in actuality, it's. I mean, you can compartmentalize certain things, but it serves their interest to be a little bit more, you know. If you think that they can do if you think they can do everything and that they're unstoppable,
all powerful,
yeah, and that serves their purpose in a way, because we used to think that there's a collection of groups of people, but they're all a bunch of idiots just like us. You know, they could screw up and stuff like that. You know, but you know, making it look like they're unstoppable is really kind of
the power of the narrative and the story and all the things that you get.
I mean, look at the scene.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Jesse, yeah, right.
Well,
he could be intimidating, one might say. You know,
that takes you right back to censorship and all power and all might going to being able to take off Alex Jones just because whatever he says, and ultimately
but it's
more
like
censorship.
It's the narrative of that happening versus like the actuality of it happening. It seems to me, you know, because it's
a panopticon effect, though, that they could be watching it any time and you can't tell who they're looking at, so they're just always watching.
Yeah,
you know?
Edward Snowden. It's like when Edward Snowden came out and said, "Hey, they're watching with a panopticon," and nobody stood up and said, "Hey, that's illegal. Let's fight this." Then they realized, oh, hey, nobody's going to stand up and say that this is illegal. So then they oust people like Alex Jones and other people, and nobody else is standing up for them. So there goes the Second Amendment.
But it's like it's a litmus test that they pull to see, and then.
But it kind of is, because this whole idea of the term panopticon, looking at things. I mean, this isn't new, and I read a book Derek Jensen wrote in 2006 or 2005 about RFID tags and the panopticon and being watched by all of these government entities, and them using these types of information collection, data collection sources, and telling us that it was for advertising, even though it's for nefarious purposes or other unnamed purposes. Derek Jensen wrote that book. It's a wonderful book. It's called Welcome to the Machine. And it's not a new concept. Edward Snowden didn't make it up. People didn't, or present it. Maybe he noted, but it was like, it's already here, and it's been going on for a very, very, very long time. And they're just exercising new technologies. As we evolve in technology, we assume that they have things that maybe they do or maybe they don't.
Yeah,
but
giving them ultimate authority. Ultimately,
I love you guys. I really do. I mean, if I lived in America, I guarantee I'd be thinking exactly the same thing. Well,
it's because it's what they're doing.
I just no. But I won't want to say faith, but I know that there are shit that must be nefarious and clandestine operations. But I also know, because let's not be silly, right? I mean, there has to be some CIA stuff going on somewhere, right? But I just mean to think of CSIS doing something and then getting away with it, and because we leak like sieves here, there's going to be someone, right? If they violated something or violated a right, it's going to be in front of somebody. But I understand there's the ominousness and gigantousness of the CIA and stuff like that would make me question that. Plus, your checks and balances is a little bit wonky. You can have things slide through cracks.
You think?
Yeah, you think.
I have a comment in general on these conspiracy theories. I think I have actually observed this a lot in Americans, especially. Like you kind of place a lot of importance on the government, like government can do this and that, and it can hide the information. It can basically make people go stupid and so on. And of course, it can to a degree, but it's not so powerful as you think it is. I think it's a projection
of something. What we see as government is a projection of something.
I think you're overstating the power of your government. That's what I'm saying.
Well, because it's injected into our mind all the time. It's always injected from every angle.
I mean, in your cultural context, it seems like government can do anything. But from my perspective, I'm from a completely different world in this sense. I mean, my government cannot do anything. It's just so. I mean,
we laugh at it. We laugh at our governments a lot.
It regulates everything, but it's so stupid and weak that it's just cannot control anything. Like really, it cannot do anything. But although it tries to control everything, so it's just there's downfall after downfall. So what I'm saying is that I frequently observe how Americans are obsessed with the government. I mean, in conspiracy theory sense, like the government does this and that and so on and so forth. And I actually want to answer to it with a joke that I told some people at the OTF conference. Maybe you would like it. So you remember this End of the World 2012, December 21st?
Right.
So there's, this guy from the meme Aliens, this guy with the weird hair. I don't know what his name is, but anyway.
Hicks, Hudson, I don't know.
Giorgio.
I think he's from Canada, actually, but I'm not sure.
That would make sense.
But anyway, so there was a joke with his image. But the joke was in sort of a meme with him as an image, background image. But anyway, the joke was, and I really liked it, was that the world has actually ended on December 21st, 2012, but the government has covered it up.
Okay, right.
See, I like that.
Yeah, this guy. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, this is great. This is a great face. Yeah, I love it.
So it kind of illustrates how Americans actually believe that the government can actually, cover up the end of the world if it likes to, So,
we got a comment. We got a comment on our page there just the other day. Someone posted. I posted the new intro, on one of the things, and they bookmarked the number and said, "It's all CGI. The Earth is flat." And I was like, I just replied, "You don't travel much, do you?" Like, that's all. That was my only comment because I don't want to be too rude, right? But,
anyway, I just kind of wanted to note that there's a distinctive cultural pattern. While Americans really, I kind of respect that aspect of your culture where you oppose your government.
Yeah,
because
I like that.
I'm very anarchistic, and I really dislike when somebody imposes some, point of view upon me. But where I live, it's norm basically. I'm an anomaly here. But in America, you're so sort of focused on this aspect.
Yeah, you should go to Austin, Texas, man. That's the center. That's ground zero.
Yeah, okay. Maybe. So you're sort of mythologizing sort of your own government, like it's super powerful and like it can do things like regular people cannot. Like it's some kind of monster, Cthulhu again, speaking about Lovecraft and sort of, but it's not like that. Government is just regular people working in, regular bureaucratic institutions, which are stupid and ineffective, and they just cannot do that,